Yo, welcome back for another vid. Slightly different setting. As you can see, usually I'm starting a video somewhere out and about, at a bike park, skate park, you name it, but I have actually been pretty ill the last month or so. Been having glandular fever, so anyone that can relate or that has had it, it is actually a really nasty infection, to be fair. Completely, like I say, wiped me out. Couldn't ride, couldn't work or anything, and that's what brings me to doing a video at home. But yeah, on the mend now, been able to eat, been able to swallow, as you can hear, been able to talk, which is all good progress. But anyway, this video isn't obviously me riding, but it's related to riding, whether you ride BMX, mountain bike, do any extreme sport, any sport, whatever. Injuries are part of every sport that we do, or every sport that you do, especially you know, the extreme sports and and riding. Basically what I do, part of the package of, you know, riding for 11-12 years. You know, I've had a fair share of injuries, so that's what this video is going to be, just sharing some of the injuries that I remember having. Without further ado, I'll get started. So basically, loads and loads of sprains, bruises, you name it, like the little injuries. If I sat here and told you all of them, we'll be looking at about a 10-hour video. But yeah, plenty of them along the way. Sort of one of the injuries that I can sort of pinpoint as my first injury, where you know, where it did sort of, it scared me to get back on the bike, was in 2015. I was riding at the NEC, which it's in Birmingham, to anyone that knows, and there was the cycle show, the bike show on, I believe it's called, and there was, like, you know, jumps set up in the building and like a competition that we was riding in that weekend. And yeah, basically I went to spin the first, so 360, the first like big kicker that they got there, I over rotated and honestly, like, just went to the bottom, like 450, like on, like to my head, and the bottom was plywood because it had just been built, the course inside the complex for that event. And yeah, knocked myself out, like clean, like completely knocked myself out. And that was like the first injury that I kind of had to overcome, that you know, was slightly scary, you know, like to get back on the bike, to do the first 360 again. So yeah, that was definitely a big, you know, like a big scare for me, one of the first ones that I remember. And then, to be fair, I have been lucky, you know, like some people do, you know, they injure themselves a lot. That, you know, people send it a lot more than me. Some people are just more unlucky, whatever it is, you know. The worst injuries I had were in 2018, in the same year, same summer, basically. And yeah, breaking both my wrists. So basically I broke both my wrists, not at the same time, but it was in the space of the same summer, if you like. So if I remember correctly, it was in June, the end of June, that I broke my left wrist. June, July, August, September, and then I got back on the bike in October. Took quite a bit of time off to recover that, and then come back, and about 3 weeks later, I snapped my right wrist as well. So, you know, I broke them in a very short amount of time. And then after breaking my right wrist as well, I was off the bike for a long time. Just took a lot of time off, because it's one of the things, like, you learn, you know, people that have been injured, you know, where big or small can relate. It's sort of, no matter what you say, it knocks your confidence to get back on the bike and get back riding. And there was a lot of rehab along the way, because although my left wrist that I broke to start with was, you know, in my eyes, strong enough to, you know, get back on the bike, it still wasn't 100%. And I'll show you now. So I was riding in these wrist braces, as you can see. So that one was for my left wrist, I believe. And then I also had a 661, which I found more comfortable for for my right wrist. So at one point I was riding in, you know, two wrist braces when I, you know, come back riding after recovering both my wrists. So, you know, a lot of lessons along the way with breaking my wrists, and part of doing this video is if it can help anyone that's, you know, broke both their wrists like me, or broke any bone in their body in whatever sport they do, you will find that there is also a journey and a process with recovering. The first time I'd done it, I learned a lot. So then, like into the second time, I had all like the lessons like prepared to recover and stay sort of healthy and recover it in the most productive way possible. And then after breaking both my wrists, a couple of years later, I also broke my little finger, so my pinky, on Sam Pilgrim. He's got an electric Sur bike, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. He rides that thing everywhere. But anyway, I dropped it when I was turning a corner and my pinky like snapped and just went the other way. And that was a very tedious injury, to be fair, because it was one of the things where it was such a small bone that I broke, but it still meant that it stopped me from doing a lot of things. So I've got 5 things that for anyone that is injured, gets injured, number one thing that I found, you know, was good for me to do was like find things that keep my brain active. Like you got to keep your mind, you know, because you can't do everyday tasks when you break a bone, especially if it's on like a more, you know, to a level where you can't walk or something like that. So just finding things that keep your brain active. To be fair, like even if that's like video games, just like making stuff. I used to just spend like a lot of time sort of like reading. I started studying a bit as well during that time. So just like trying to stay productive, because when I first did it, I didn't do any of that. And it was sort of, when you're sitting there, that's when like the mind games start. And it's, it's just, long story short, it's important just to keep your brain active, especially if it's an injury that's completely, you know, immobilized you from doing anything. So yeah, find bits that, you know, keep your brain active. Correct nutrition was a big thing as well. So I've always ate quite well, especially now. You know, my job being a personal trainer and nutritionist, it's just something that I always do. But the first time around that I broke my wrist, I didn't really, you know, I wasn't really aware of how much, you know, difference and the effect that the correct nutrition does have. So bits like drinking lots of milk, so lots of calcium and bits like that. You can get like supplements that you know, have vitamin D, calcium, which is all good for your bones, and that will just all help repair if that is a broken bone. Obviously different injuries, like you can do ligaments, whatever it is. So just do a bit of research into the correct nutrition and make sure you stay on top of that. Number 3 is like when you can start to do more bits, big or small, just like easing yourself back into things. It's very easy to take 1 step forward, 2 steps back sort of thing, as they say. So just like easing yourself back into things, because it doesn't take a lot, especially when you've not been using that body part that you've hurt. You know, you can easily undo any progress that you've made, you know, which you don't want to prolong the time that you're off doing things any longer than you have to. Again, when you get to a point where you know the physio or however you choose to get it repaired, like the correct stretching and the correct strengthening as well is massive, like to any injury that you do, wherever it is, any bone. You don't want to overdo it to the point where you're undoing any progress, but the correct stretching, the correct strengthening, which is beneficial and strengthens that area in a safe way, so you can progress, will just really help, not just with like the current recovery of the area or the bone or whatever. It also helps with like the longevity of it. So really focus on the correct strengthening, correct stretching, get that area moving again, and then that, you know, comes back into sort of easing back into things. Number 5, which is probably like the biggest thing throughout the whole injury, which is being patient. Like, injuries do take time to recover, and it's something that I learned after snapping my wrist the second time. Maybe that was just unlucky, or maybe I was rushing a bit getting back onto the bike, that I wasn't ready to ride. But it's all just like lessons that you learn along the way, I guess. Even though it did suck the second time around, from doing it the first time around, I had a good insight and a good I've been there before, basically, so I could recover it. And that's, basically the idea of this video, is to just run through the things that I found were like the most important to get recovered, get back doing the sport that you love. Little recap. So, like I say, keep your brain active, find things that you like to do, what you can still do. Obviously, if you're completely immobilised, you are limited to what you can do, but even just bits like video games, studying, I've found like little models that I used to make, just like little things like that, sort of just help, stay busy. Correct nutrition, ease back into things, correct post stretching and strengthening, and then also being patient throughout the whole recovery process of your injury. If you've got any other tips, so any other you guys have experienced anything, then comment that down below. Any advice is good advice, and I'm open to learning as well, so just put that down below. To anyone that's currently going through an injury, no matter how big or small, it does suck, like the time off and knowing what to do with yourself, and just sitting there by yourself, sort of trying to recover in your own head. That's where these tips, like I say, like just are what I found that were just important to do and helped me along the way. So to anyone going through an injury, no matter how big or small, that they do suck, like they do, but it is all just down to just being patient and riding the wave, and just trying to get back to the sport that you love doing as soon as possible. I hope you guys enjoyed this vid, and that some of these tips do help you. If you did like the vid, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Take it easy. Ciao.